This is the Beatleverse Mini-Albums, where I take a Beatles album and shrink it down to 7 magnificent songs. No more, no less. Using a patented, pataphysical 4-step process to squeeze out the pure Beatles concentrate and create a mini-album that is a superior listening experience to the original Beatles album. Ladies and gentlemen, Magical Mystery Tour. This is the 4th and final of the Far Out Psychedelic mini-albums. I've done Sgt Pepper's, Yellow Submarine, and Revolver. Go and check out those mini-albums by clicking on the link below. Magical Mystery Tour is one of the most psychedelic of the Beatles albums. As you probably know, Side 1 of Magical Mystery Tour consists of 6 tracks from the Magical Mystery Tour film. Side 2 is compiled of 5 singles released in 1967. There are 2 songs in Magical Mystery Tour that are ineligible for consideration, as both songs were singles for the Sgt Pepper album and appear on the Sgt Pepper Mini-Album. Those songs, of course, are Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields Forever. With that said, let's get into it. Step 1, opener and closer. Like Sgt Pepper and Yellow Submarine, the opener is the title track. Magical Mystery Tour raises the curtain on this acid-inspired bus ride through the English countryside. We eat fish and chips with the Beatles as they take us on a tour of chaos, singing surreal songs of far-out musical theater. 1967 really was a trip. The song Magical Mystery Tour was recorded less than a week after the final session for Sgt Pepper. So the Magical Mystery Tour project really is a continuation or even a sequel to Pepper. And it shows. Especially the coda of the song, which gets jazzy and dark and a little mysterious. It's my favorite part of the song. Of course, Magical Mystery Tour makes the cut. The closer is All You Need Is Love. This song was the big single in 1967 and became the anthem for the hippy-dippy Summer of Love. All You Need Is Love is famous for several reasons, but mostly because the song was chosen to represent Great Britain during the first ever global satellite broadcast of a live television show called Our World. Over 400 million people in 25 countries tuned in to watch the Beatles debut their new British single, which of course starts off with the French national anthem. The performance was filmed at EMI Studios on Abbey Road. In the audience were many Beatles friends and family and esteemed guests, including members of the Rolling Stones and The Who. Mick Jagger wore a jacket with John Lennon's face painted on the back. I've always wondered about that jacket. What happened to it? Where is it now? All You Need Is Love also doubles as an awesome medley of classical and jazz samples, scored of course by master producer George Martin. All You Need Is Love is an undisputed Beatles classic, which of course makes the cut. Step 2, the singles. The B-side to All You Need Is Love is Baby, You're a Rich Man. This is my favorite track on Magical Mystery Tour. Something about the beat, the drums and bass, the rhythm of the piano, John's beautiful falsetto, and the super catchy sing-along chorus makes this song one of the Beatles' most infectious tracks. Somehow, it's also the hardest rocking song on the album. The Beatles did not rock out that much in 1967, which makes this song a welcome change of pace. And then there's the clavioline, that weird instrument that sounds like an obscure Indian flute, but really, it's an early forerunner to the synthesizer. John plays it with maximum mayhem and punk rock intention. It's yet another of those unique Beatles sounds that was never heard from before or since. Baby You're a Rich Man makes the cut. The other single from this era is Hello Goodbye. To me, Hello Goodbye is the sequel to Paul's perfect pop song, Penny Lane. It's bright, it's bubbly, it has an even better coda, it went straight to number 1. This track, however, is more of Paul's poppy pop and a bit too repetitive. And although I'm tempted to keep it off the mini-album, I think the track is probably too popular to keep off. And so, Hello Goodbye makes the cut. The B-side is the mighty, the powerful, I Am the Walrus. Part 3 of John's psychedelic trilogy, I Am the Walrus is one of the Beatles' most important and iconic works. For a deep dive into I Am the Walrus, check out my John Lennon Psychedelic Trilogy episode, part of the Songs That Go Together Well series. I Am the Walrus was one of John's favorite Beatles tracks. Lennon was famous for shitting on his own songs in the Beatles, but he never had a negative word to say about Walrus. The song is overflowing with surreal sounds and words and an epic score by George Martin. I Am the Walrus is an absolute heavyweight of a song and 100% makes the cut. So that's the singles taken care of. Step 3, George and Ringo songs. George's contribution to Magical Mystery Tour is part 2 of George's psychedelic trilogy, the dark and spooky Blue Jay Way. The other parts of the trilogy are Only a Northern Song and It's All Too Much. I have to admit, Blue Jay Way is not one of my favorite George tracks. It's a bit long and repetitive towards the end, but it's good and interesting enough for me to include it on the mini-album. The lyrics are simply about waiting on friends who got lost on their way to a party in Los Angeles, but somehow, George makes it sound and feel like a prelude to the Manson murders. Regardless, Blue Jay Way makes the cut. Ringo doesn't have a song on Magical Mystery Tour. Or does he? We'll get back to Ringo in a bit. But first, let's talk about Paul McCartney's other two Magical Mystery Tour tracks on side one, The Fool on the Hill and Your Mother Should Know. The Fool on the Hill is a good tune, best known for the Pied Piper flutes. The flutes are then referenced a year later in Glass Onion from the White Album. But it's never been one of my favorites, mostly because Paul has now entered his overly repetitive phase of songwriting. Paul repeats himself often on these Magical Mystery Tour tracks. The Fool on the Hill does not make the cut. Next, Your Mother Should Know. The only music hall number on the album is also the big finale of the Magical Mystery Tour movie. In the film, all four Beatles are dressed in white tuxedos, dancing terribly in unison and looking like they are in desperate need of a proper film director. But the song is an earworm, and I appreciate the sentiment of the lyrics. Let's all get up and dance to a song that was a hit before your mother was born. What Paul is saying here is that old school is the best school, a message that resonates more today than ever before. Your Mother Should Know is great, but it does not make the cut because the last spot on the mini-album is awarded to one of my favorite tracks on the album, Flying. The mostly instrumental track, Flying is one of the Beatles' most obscure, dismissed, and underrated songs. And it's one of their most unique, and the only Beatles song credited to all four Beatles. Flying was written by Lennon, McCartney, Harrison, and Starkey, which is why Flying is taking the spot of the Ringo song. Most people incorrectly call this track an instrumental. You clearly hear Ringo leading the other three Beatles in a sing-along chant towards the end of the song. If it was a proper instrumental, there would be no vocals whatsoever on the track. Flying is groovy, lazy, atmospheric, and cosmic. It's a great Magical Mystery Tour movie track, and it makes the cut. And that, Beatlenauts, is the Magnificent Seven for the Magical Mystery Tour mini-album. Time to sequence. Track 1, of course, is the title track, Magical Mystery Tour, followed by another perfect pop song and number one hit, Hello Goodbye. Then the magical mushrooms kick in with George's California Acid Trip, track 3, Blue Jay Way. Track 4, we take to the skies with Flying. Track 5, John's trippy lyrical nightmare, I Am the Walrus. And we finish with two of the best singles from the era, track 6, Baby You're a Rich Man, and track 7, All You Need Is Love. Can you dig it?
Fog upon LA. I am he as you are me, and we are all together. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man. Baby, you're a rich man too. All you need is love. All together.
Check out the mini-album playlist link below. So what does this mini-album tell us? In my opinion, it sounds like Sgt Pepper Part 2. The songs seem a bit more chaotic and less focused. Yet, it still makes for a brilliant ride through 1967 psychedelia. We get another musical theater show opener, another Paul McCartney perfect pop song. Then we get 3 tracks of pure Beatles psychedelia. A spooky George Harrison number, followed by a cool and groovy film score track, and a John Lennon psychedelic masterpiece, followed by 2 massive Summer of Love hit singles. And the MVP for this mini-album? Paul McCartney is the most obvious contender, as the idea for the Magical Mystery Tour project was all his. John's contributions are also top-notch, and his vision of psychedelic music sets the bar for all others. George Martin's production and scores are as important as anything else on the album, but I'm going to give this MVP to lysergic acid, diethylamide, and the music that LSD inspired in the Beatles. In other words, the MVP goes to psychedelia. This period of the Beatles is not my favorite, as I prefer the Beatles when they rock. There's very little rock on this mini-album, but there's no denying that no one did psychedelia quite like the Beatles. So what do you think, Beatlenauts? Have I created a better Magical Mystery Tour than Magical Mystery Tour? I say yes. These 7 magnificent songs are a better listen than the 11 hit-and-miss tracks on the original album. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments below.
End of part 1. Intermission. End of intermission. Part 2.
In the next episode of Beatleverse Mini-Albums. It's the toughest mini-album yet. A mini-album so difficult to compile, with so many magnificent songs, that I have yet to decide on a final track list of 7 songs. Ladies and gentlemen, help is on the way. If you like and subscribe. Can you dig it?